Welcome back. I'm Dr. Cheek and I'm a licensed clinical psychologist. Forgive me if you hear me sniffing throughout this video. Apparently when you get to a certain age, you develop new allergies or they persist. So I have seasonal allergies, so you may notice that my nose is red and my eyes are red. I haven't been crying. I've been dealing with allergies. So with that being said, today, if you haven't been able to tell by the title, we're going to talk a little bit about that viral TikTok that's going around about who the bleep did I marry and marrying a pathological liar. Let me first start off by saying I reached my social media threshold at about Instagram. So I do not have TikTok. So I was introduced to this woman's TikToks by my sister. And if you don't know about it, it's a 50 series TikTok of her talking about this a little bit over a year-long relationship that she had with someone that she met online and finding out that he was a pathological liar. And she says, who the bleep did I marry? Before I start to get into my assessment of this individual's 50 video series, I want to start by saying I thank her for sharing her experience. And I thank her for sharing her experience for multiple reasons. But one primary reason is so that, one, his identity is out now. Hopefully it's not too much of a safety risk for her. I hope she's able to put some things into place and make sure she's okay and her family's okay. But now that his identity is out, more women can know who he is and deal with him with a greater level of discernment, hopefully. Also, it takes a lot of guts and a lot of courage to be able to get in front of a camera and tell that much of your life story to someone and to total strangers. And it's not an easy thing to do. And when you have to deal with internet trolls and people dissecting every aspect of your life, it's not comfortable. So I appreciate her for sharing, and I appreciate her for having the confidence to be able to share her story and to try to assist others in this process, in this healing process for her. And I imagine that this is the part of the healing process for her. Now, I know some of you are probably wondering, how does someone get that far along in a relationship and not necessarily know who they married or put up with some of the things that she kind of described putting up with throughout that process? And simply put, she engaged in one of the tactics for handling cognitive dissonance. And I know you're probably saying, what is cognitive dissonance? And cognitive dissonance is one of those words that academics use. It's supposed to mean something and it means absolutely nothing. So I'm going to hopefully simplify cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is basically that psychological or mental uncomfortableness that we feel when we are faced with contradictory information about our own attitudes, beliefs, or opinions, or what we hold true. So when someone tells us something, or when we learn something that goes against something it goes against what we already think, believe, our opinions, or what we hold true, we experience this mental uncomfortableness because now we have to figure out what to do with this new information. So we have one or two ways of handling this new information. Either we can accommodate that new information, and what it looks like to accommodate is actually taking in the information, trying to reassess your own existing attitudes, values, beliefs, opinions, and seeing how you can fit this new information into what you already know. And maybe it might change what you already believe. It may change your opinion, but being able to make space for this new information. So we can accommodate, or we can engage in what we consider self-deception. And self-deception is a nice psychological term for lying to yourself. So basically you engage in lying in yourself to kind of justify holding on or maintaining those beliefs, attitudes, or opinions about a situation or something that's happening in your life. And that's basically what happened in this situation, how this relationship continued to progress past the point of learning that first deception. So with that being said, I'm going to point out at least 3 ways that this particular individual engaged in cognitive dissonance based on her depiction of her story. First way that she engaged in cognitive dissonance was her religious beliefs told her that it was against the rules to shack up. So we feel some mental uncomfortableness when we have a religious belief saying we need to behave in this way. However, we're wanting to behave in this way. So we kind of justify it. And in this case, she justified it by saying it's COVID. So we can move in together because it's COVID and we are about to go on lockdown. I don't know what that really means. None of us had ever dealt with a pandemic, so none of us knew what that meant. So it kind of gave you a pass to do something outside of the normal convention. So we don't have to follow the normal dating conventions as dictated by my religion or my own internal stance on dating or living with someone. I can forego or bypass that convention because now we're in a situation, this pandemic makes things a little different. So I'm going to make an exception because of the pandemic. And none of us knew what was going to happen in that pandemic. So that was one of the first ways she engaged in cognitive dissonance. Another way that she engaged in cognitive dissonance was when they were looking for their first home. And she found out definitively that he had lied to her. And in her preparation for hearing the lie that he was going to tell, she already prepared herself mentally for what that lie would look like. So when he followed through with that lie, instead of her having that mental uncomfortableness because of his deception, she felt relief because she had already prepared for that mental deception. So she had already told a truth to herself that he was going to lie. And she had already reconciled in herself that regardless of what he said, she was going to believe that lie. She had already told herself that I know he's going to have to lie, probably to save face, and I'm going to believe his lie. So I'm going to tell myself that I'm going to believe his lie. I'm going to lie to myself to tell myself that I'm going to believe his lie. And I'm just going to move on. That's the second way she engaged in cognitive dissonance. And the third way was that she turned away from her trusted supports. So those individuals that she felt like she could trust their opinions, those that she felt like she could confide in and kind of get their advice, because she felt like they already had concerns about him. There were already some things that weren't adding up. And I'm pretty sure they were already saying these things to her, like, something's not adding up. And when you're already feeling this mental uncomfortableness, the last thing you want or you need is someone that you trust and love and kind of, and maybe respect, telling you or feeding into you those same uncomfortable thoughts and narratives. So if we're already lying to ourselves to help us relieve some of this mental uncomfortableness, we will cut off people. We will cut off friendships. We will cut off relationships with family members or certain individuals that bring back that same mental uncomfortableness, because we're not ready to face that mental uncomfortableness. And God forbid that that friend who was telling her, or that family member that was telling her that something was off in this relationship, God forbid that that person was single. Because let's be clear, that gives you all the reason to discount everything they're saying. They're single. They're just mad that I'm in a relationship and I'm with this man that wants to do all these wonderful things for me. They don't care about me. They don't love me enough. They don't want to see me happy. So I can cut off that friendship. I can cut off that relationship because they're not really seeing what I'm seeing in this relationship. Although they're probably seeing it very clearly. They're not seeing what I'm seeing in this relationship, so I can let that friendship go because they don't want to see me happy. That's how we engage in cognitive dissonance. That's how we justify continuing to believe or buy into this narrative that we are telling ourselves. Because this narrative feels more comfortable than facing the uncomfortableness of the new information that's coming in. So these are some of the ways that she engaged in cognitive dissonance that allowed this relationship to go on past his first deception 3 months into their relationship. So there are 3 different things that I appreciated as a psychologist listening to this story and listening to her Q&A following this. So the 3 things that I appreciated about listening to this was, 1, her acknowledgement or her taking accountability for her own ability to overlook those deceptions or those things that she had found out that she knew was lies, and looking over those things that she had found out because she knew that she feared getting older and being alone and not being in a relationship, and not, as she said, it not being her time. So her time for happiness in a relationship. And on the one hand, I understand that because I'm a single woman, and I'm a single woman of a certain age, and I know I look young. Maybe some people tell me I look young, so don't come at me. But although I look young, I am a woman of a certain age and I am single. So I understand the fear associated with getting older and not being in a relationship. And at the same time, could I have been married? At least twice at this point in my life. But I chose peace over the ability to say my husband. I chose peace over being able to say I'm married or I'm in a relationship, or being able to have that Suge Avery moment of I smell it now. You hear me? I smell it now. So I chose peace. So I understand, on the one hand, I understand getting older and fearing not being in a relationship. But on the other hand, I know what it feels like to not want to come home. So the second thing that I appreciated by watching this video was that she was willing to, one, go to therapy, and two, to stop seeing a therapist that she felt like was not working for her. I think sometimes clients get too caught up in having loyalty to their therapist. And let me be really clear. I tell this to clients that come to see me. I am a psychologist. My job is to help you navigate this journey of life in a way that allows you to maintain your mental stability. So when you come in a room with me, you have to be completely open and vulnerable in a way that is scary to anybody. So if you are going to see a therapist, and if you are going to be able to do the work, you have to feel safe, you have to feel comfortable being vulnerable, and you have to be willing to let this person in. And if that therapist is not the person you feel safe with, comfortable with, the ability to be vulnerable, you are not going to do the work. So be willing to walk away from any therapist that you feel like is not working for you. And as a psychologist and as a therapist, I understand that I don't work for everyone. So if you are working with a therapist that is good at what they do and they accept their role and their power in that therapy room, then they're willing to understand that this relationship is not working for you, and it's okay for you to find a therapist that works for you. So be willing to walk away from a therapist if you know that you're not getting what you need out of that therapy session or in those therapy rooms. Okay? So third thing that I appreciated, or the final thing that I appreciated, was her, what I hope and what it feels like, one of the greatest takeaways that she may have gotten out of this entire situation was that her acknowledging that she's not in a place to forgive herself, and being able to understand that self-forgiveness is probably one of the most valuable or needed aspects of therapy to get you past a problematic situation. When we get to a place that we practice, or we're able to practice or engage in self-forgiveness, we're able to take a look in that mirror and see all of ourselves without judgment. So self-forgiveness is being able to stop focusing on why someone behaved the way they behaved and start focusing on, why did I accept that behavior? Or why did I behave in the way that I behaved? And when we get to that place, we're able to practice self-forgiveness, and we're able to probably overcome what more than likely was a problematic situation. And we start to learn to rebuild that trust and self-confidence in ourselves once we're able to forgive ourselves. I hope she's able to get to that place through therapy, through journaling, through self-discovery, through whatever method it takes for her to get to a place to forgive herself for this situation and get to a place where she learns to trust her instinct, or that internal voice of common sense that says, you know something is not right. So what I hope you learn from today's video is this. Cognitive dissonance is real, and we all engage in it in some level. But I want us to stop doing that mental gymnastics. And mental gymnastics is those flips, those turns, those tumbles, or those hoops, or whatever we're willing to jump through to kind of make sense of the senseless. Because to accept in those moments what is feels like a death of self and a death of self-identity. So I want us to forego going into those mental gymnastics to make sense of the senseless. And I want us to face situations head on, even when they're uncomfortable. We don't change when we're comfortable. Change doesn't happen when we're comfortable. So be willing to face that uncomfortableness and not engage in mental gymnastics. So I hope you've learned something from today's video. Jot down any questions or comments you have below. I thank you for listening, and you will be seeing me again very soon.